I graduated high school at the age of 20 by the grace of God, and I would love to share that testimony with you today. First, let me start by saying thank you for coming to my channel, Royal Ties to Faith. I am crystal blessed. If you did not see my salvation testimony on how I started my relationship with Christ, I encourage you to do so after you see this video, so that way you get a little more context of this testimony. I grew up very insecure of the appearance of my body and my teeth. I had really bad teeth due to poor hygiene and improper care for braces. I got braces when I was graduating 5th grade, 6th grade, I'm not too sure, and I was completely ridiculed daily for them by my peers. So by the time I was in the 9th grade, that led me to really hate them and deem them pointless. So I started to take them off myself. This made my teeth weak because, of course, there's a process that after you have the braces, you would have to do to strengthen back your teeth in order so that they would not shift and maintain its results. Because I missed this process and I did not fully take in what braces was and what it was for and embrace it really, I started to experience bone loss. I think it's a result from either gingivitis or something like that. I'm not too sure, don't quote me on it. But long term, what it did was eat my bone. So now it resulted to me losing at the age of 16 partial of my front tooth. So that kind of like took out, it ended up mismatching my teeth because they had to fix it. Thank God for that. That was also God. But they had to fix it. So they bonded. That's what they did. They bonded the tooth to blend it in the hole, because it kind of did like a little hole in the front tooth. So it bonded it so that it can, look like it's a regular tooth, but it didn't look like a regular tooth. And I know it. And that made me very insecure, of course. So yes, I had a journey with my teeth because that was just the beginning of that journey. Maybe more for another testimony of that, but I will definitely share. As my appearance, when I was a small child, I was really tiny, skinny, everything you can imagine, beautiful smile, everything. But when I turned like around maybe 10 or going on 11 years old or so, we spent the summer with my grandparents. When I say we, it's me and my sisters. We ended up spending the entire summer, which was about a month and a half, in Puerto Rico by my grandmother's house. So my grandparents, of course, they're older, and they really didn't get out much. And I think even more so that they had us, because I think it brought them anxiety to have to worry if something happens to us. So of course that led us to really do nothing but be in the house. I spent the summer in between houses, in my grandmother's house, between my grandmother's house and my grandmother's sister's house. So I call her Titi Carmen. So she was literally her neighbor. So it was her house, Titi Carmen's house. So what I would do is literally, I began to eat out of boredom. So I developed a routine for the time spent there. I had breakfast at my grandmother's house, and then I would have breakfast at my Titi Carmen's house. And that followed like that for lunch and for dinner. So basically, from having 3 meals a day and maybe some snacks in between, it was like 6 meals a day and maybe some snacks in between. So that made me start gaining some weight. Now, it wasn't, of course, a drastic change. It was more gradually that it happened. So going back to school, it was no big deal in the beginning because it was cute. Oh, I just put on a little weight, so of course it looked good on me. But up until it did not look good on me anymore, that it made me a target now for that. So middle school happens and that's where more or less I would say, if I had to think back, where the foundation, maybe not the foundation, but the insecurity increased, because the boys now would like me, and then the next moment they made fun of me. So then this was also where I began not respecting my body, and because I was passive on when they would be touchy, so I started to experience betrayal by some of my peers, and some of them would just talk behind my back and ridicule me, slander my name. Oh yes, I studied that at a very young age, going through those things. So and I had also some friends that turned on me. So that definitely, my confidence and my trust at that time was crushed, where I felt like, yeah, I don't trust nobody. So right before I started high school is where I began to smoke weed. I think my very first time doing that was in 8th grade, and I remember skipping school. That was my very first time skipping school and smoking weed that day. I ended up skipping school and ended up doing that with 2 of my friends, and that was the first. And ever since then, it just slowly became something I did. Yeah, so fast forward, I started high school very insecure and socially awkward. So now I sit by myself, and at this point I didn't trust anybody, so I didn't want to really engage. It was hard for me to do so, because I just felt like everything else would just follow, and then on top of that, everybody was just, everything was just new, you know, the little things that you get when you're about to start a new school. For some it's exciting, for me it was not. I went every day, and then slowly started to develop a pattern of going in late, missing a period or two, and that's where everything just started to, I just kind of not cared too much for it, especially with everything else that I was experiencing internally. So I maintained to pass a few classes and show up, just didn't really do much of the assignments or anything, and I got caught just skipping school and avoiding being there much. Because high school is different from middle school, you pass according to the credits that you have. So by the time my mom found out that I was failing, I was supposed to be graduating. I only accumulated enough credits to be in the 10th grade. The obvious question is, where was my mother and my father, and what role did they play? They actually worked for the same lock company, lock factory. It was a factory, and they were making locks and keys. My father was a shop steward, and my mother prepared the keys and locks and the cylinders. I believe she was really doing the cylinders. They worked all day, and when they got home, my mom would cook or wash clothes, and my dad would just sleep. So they didn't really engage too much in detail how was school. And for some reason, I don't remember, once I started going into, I want to say middle school, somewhere down there, they stopped really going to parent-teacher night. So it wasn't something that they did consistently. And of course, so that gave me the freedom to just say, hey, school's great, I'm passing my classes, yeah, sure. And they would just kind of go off that. Until, of course, I couldn't do that anymore. So when she found out, the letter came in from my counselor, basically to meet the counselor, let them know I had been missing so much days of school, and they're looking for an alternative for me to get out of the school so that I can do the GED. By this time, I'm already living this lifestyle of party, drinking, smoking, and skipping school, promiscuous already enough. A lot of things happened all in between that. So by the time she came to tell me this, I was already feeling like, oh my God, what am I going to do? So having her come and seeing the disappointment in her face, it just made it worse. It crushed me. I didn't want my mom to go through those things, and see that. And as a side note, my brothers and my sisters from my mother's side, they did not have their high school diploma at that time, nor the GED. So as much as I felt as a failure, so did she. Having seen her and seeing that she felt like that also, she didn't have to say it. I could see it in her face. I was able to discern that. And in that moment, that's when I ended up crying out to God. Yeah. So having her go through that, and then I'm going through it and being confronted, I was also not just confronted about school, but I was experiencing the emotions of not graduating. My best friend was graduating. My friends were graduating around me, and I'm just like, oh my God. We hanged out every day, and I was busy in my feelings, and you was out there busting your behind to get, that diploma. And that crushed me. That was able to experience the prom and all the fun stuff that you get to do with your peers and enjoy that. And I wasn't able to do that. So I feel like at that time, that's when more or less I felt crushed in my spirit. And I felt like God was already working in that and through that part of me, of being able to understand, like, there's something lacking, in your life. So that night, anyhow, I ended up crying out to God, to him, and letting him know, like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to live this lifestyle like this. I wanted to finish school. I wanted my mom to be proud of me, and I just asked him. I prayed, and I said, God, help me be able to gain that confidence and that strength to know that I can do this. I can push through these barriers of insecurity and the lack of confidence and the tear me down that that came with it. And just to be able to do that. And I wanted to do it for my mom. Another side note was that she was actually going through it with her health at the time. She wasn't operating as her normal, regular, I believe she was in her 40s at that time. Like, she was a lot slower than other people, and I do it out of comparison just to say, like, somebody that was 40 and healthy, she was 40 and she seemed unhealthy. She was going to the doctor, so that kind of put a little bit of fear in me, like, oh my God, I'm about to lose my mom. And God forbid, had I, had that happen, I wanted to be able to be like, you know what, let her have that one thing that I would be able to give to her. And that was really where I felt all of that started brewing in me, and that was where that prayer really was led to be able to give her back something that she would be proud of and stuff. So yes. So that was my beginning journey, though, because that was the moment he started to reveal himself to me in ways that at the moment it was inexplainable. Now I can see it and look back and say, yeah, that was God all the way. Like, that was his grace. That was his mercy over me. And oh, it's such a beautiful feeling when you're able to have those aha moments and say, yes, God, you walked me through that. Yes, you gave me that information. So what led to that part was that same night I did my research to see how I can stay in high school and not do the alternative. And I didn't want to go through the GED program. I already was like, I don't want to get out it was hard enough to get me into a school that I wasn't used to and it was new to me. And then to go out and go to another school and do that process again, yeah, no, that wasn't me. I wasn't trying to do that again. But let me tell you how it starts. Funny, sometimes there's some things that you catch. It's caught. You know, it's not taught, but it's caught. And it didn't make sense. And I feel like it didn't make sense to me at that time because there was an appointed time for it to come together. So basically, what I'm saying, prior to this happening, I ended up, God brought back to my mind. Remember, I was in school at a time, and I saw this boy that looked like he was overdue and for graduating, should I say. I'm sorry. Overdue for graduating. And I overheard someone saying about him, saying if he doesn't finish it by this year, before he turns 21, he will not be able to finish it in the school. And, you know, I don't know what I heard. I just understood I heard it. But God brought that back to mind. And that's what led to my research, to basically find out whether if I had time to graduate in that school. So that way I knew that I wouldn't be able to get kicked out. So that I knew I wouldn't be able to get kicked out. And that was all God helping me through that process. I ended up doing my research, and then I went to that meeting. I went to that meeting with my mom, and I let the school counselor talk completely. And the moment he mentioned that I had to, I had to do the alternative or whatever the case may be, was to go to another school. And I looked at him and I said no. And he said, what do you mean? And I was like, I did my research, and I was like, I have until I'm 21 years old before I can get out of here. So he's like, so basically he knew I was right. And I just kind of was like, so he looked at me, he said, okay, so what's your plan? And I looked and I said, I'm going to finish it here. I'm going to finish it before I'm 21 years old, and I'm going to graduate. And he's like, what's your plan? And I looked and I was like, okay, you're right. I said, I'll take out my lunch, which I ended up doing. So that was 9 periods instead of 8 periods out of the day. So I ended up doing that, and then I had to pass my regents. And that was the deal, so that I can get it done within those 2 years, because I believe I was already 18 at the time. And that's how I ended up doing that. That is all praiseworthy to my Father, because the Lord knows that God helped me through that. He provided me the wisdom and the understanding to come up with a strategy to be able to execute this. And he also gave me the confidence to speak up. He gave me the confidence to face school every day alone. And even though I may have not had friends, I had favor with people. I can't say that I didn't. I had a few young people, and it was funny because they were younger than me, and they were motivated, they were talented, they were skilled, they're good. Like, these girls, there were girls and then boys that were driven for the future, should I say, and they had this mentality, I'm going to be somebody, I'm going to do something about it. And that's what inspired me to push through and say, no, I got this. I'm going to be here like this. I'm going to be here this old, and these kids are doing it. I can do it too, and I'm going to push myself forward. And God gave me that extra supernatural strength to continue doing it in spite of the inner me. And that was truly how I did it, by his grace. Not only did I do it that way by his grace, because I didn't do it where, okay, I turned completely honor roll. No, I showed up. I literally just showed up, wrote my work, participated in class here and there with a question or two, or answered a question or two, and just made attendance, to be honest. And because I believe, again, by his grace and the favor that I had over my life with, just walking in that the teachers also understood, like, she's trying. It may not put in the best effort, but she did something. She showed up today. And I definitely can say that was by grace. That was not nothing that I did extraordinary that I can sit there and say, well, I bust my butt. No, I did not. That was all grace. All God. Shortly after that, though, so after the meeting, my mom ended up coming to me, and I guess she thought about it too, like, no, I want to push forward, and maybe God spoke to her too in that sense, where it just was like, you're about to be laid off, push her, you can do this. And she was being laid off. So my mother and my father's company was actually moving to Florida, and they weren't going to Florida. So she ended up coming to me, and she's like, whatever I can do to help, I want to. And she was like, I'll take you to school every morning if it's a problem with you just getting there. And she did that. They did that. They got me up, and I got up every morning with my parents, and they drove me to school. Now, I won't say that everything was easy, because it wasn't. I did my part, but I had some tough days to battle through mentally and emotionally, dealing with that, of course. But as I became more consistent, I became more confident, and I ended up finding a church, which was called, again, Saint Christ Tabernacle. I said Saint because now that's what it's called. It's called Saint's Church. It's a beautiful church, beautiful pastors, and I ended up attending it with my little sister and my mom. So we ended up visiting, just becoming visitors. I won't say that we were full active members. No, we didn't serve and all of that good stuff. We just ended up coming in, and I was just listening and gravitating to the Word of God. I had a part-time job at the time. I took that on. I think I started working at 15, a little part-time, so it was weekends and more weekends. Yeah, just weekends and after school, maybe 1 or 2 days, but not really as much, because now I wanted to finish school, so I didn't really take that on too much. So once I accepted Christ as my Lord and Savior, I decided that I wanted to do life with Him, and I fell in love with God, and I started to fall in love with His Word. So I want to say that it happened drastically, but it really was gradually, but more where I was experiencing having more word than more friends time, because I felt like that was where my distraction came. So instead of like going to school and coming back home and go hang out, I kind of came back home and I did whatever homework I had, and if I did do any homework, don't call me on that. But or I would just kind of read the Word, take a nap or something, where I was more calm. Like, I just started to cut down on a lot of everything, because I started to just feed on that Word, and that's what made me more stronger. That's what made me more, I just fell in love with God, and that was my time with God. Like, that was my relationship. That's where I was building. Is in my desperation, I would find Him. And if I had a rough day, that's where I came home to. I came home to God. I came home to His Word, and He would restore me in that place. He would give me the strength for the next day. And so that was really the pattern. It was feeding on Him and His Word that gave me the courage and the strength to go the next day and the next day and the next day and continue on that way, because that's what really carried me through. It was His grace. It was His grace, and I love that. But now I did become pregnant at this point. I became pregnant with this wasn't my first pregnancy. So I had an abortion prior to this. And at the time, my mother did not know that I had that abortion. only my friend knew that I had that abortion. And that was something that I did not want. I think I was 16 at the time when I first had that abortion, and I didn't want to go through that and not do school. So that was all of the things that tied into making that moment, because that did also bring a depression. You know, that also did hurt me, and I didn't want to do that because I knew that that wasn't something that God likes. You know, I was conscious of that, and I ended up doing it anyway at the age of 16. But this time around, I knew without a doubt, like, not that I was planning it, but I wasn't also being cautious. So it ended up happening, and when it happened, at this point, I was just like, yeah, I have no other option, but this is gonna have to, like, I'm not about to quit school, because I'm almost, like, trying to push through to finish this thing, but I'm also not about to take this baby out. Like, that was not an option, at least not for me. You know, I can't say that for anybody else, but for me and my body and me and my Lord, we were having this baby, and that was my firstborn. So I ended up I decided to keep it and push it through, with the expectation again, that God had my back. At this point now, I'm like, God got me. You know, he got my back, and he brought me this far, and I'm going to keep pushing through. And believe it or not, that actually brought me even more closer to God, because I leaned on him. I depended on him. I needed him in that. And because my parents also was like, don't worry, I support you, you're going to push through, that helped me be able to say, I'm not alone in this, and that we're going to cover the baby financially for me at the time. So yes, I ended up pushing through by God's grace, and I graduated with my 4-month baby boy. And God was so faithful. His gracious and his goodness was over me, and it followed me, it encouraged me, it empowered me. I pray and I hope that this testimony has encouraged you, or even inspired you to be able to question, like, I want to have that relationship with God. Or even if you have already a relationship with God, it motivates you to keep pressing forward. I hope and that you experience his goodness, his grace, his mercy, just like I have. If you haven't, there's an opportunity and there's an invitation he is extending to you in this moment, that you'll be able to receive him and all of him in his full. I love that. If you've enjoyed, please like and comment. I would love to hear from you. And subscribe if you want to keep up with my life with Christ. Be blessed.